Okay, in this section 6-1, we are beginning a new unit. And so in this section, we're looking at the laws of exponents. Okay, so we begin to look at how to handle expressions that are multiplied together with exponents other than 1. All right, so here is the product rule. So when you're multiplying two expressions together, what you will do with the two exponents is you will add them together. So x to the a power, whatever a is, times x to the b power, that will also be some number. In order to combine that together and simplify it, you'll keep the same base, which is x, and then what you will do is you will add the powers together. So this now becomes to the a plus b power. So for example, if this one was 2x squared, and then this one was 3x to the third, then to get the simplified answer, I would take a, or x, and then go to the 2, and then plus 3 power. So 2 plus 3 makes 5. In that example, it would be x to the 5th. All right? So let's run through some examples so that you can kind of see what we're talking about here. So in example 1, we've got x to the 3rd times x to the 7th. All right? So I know my base is x, so I know it's going to be x raised to some power. Well, remember, the product rule says I need to take those two exponents and add them together. So I need to go 3 plus 7 to make x to the 10. All right? The reason why we know that this is correct is because, remember what a power is. That means that base times itself to whatever the power is, number of times. So like for example, x to the 3rd, what does that really mean? That means x times itself 3 times. X times x times x. All right? And what does x to the 7th really mean? X times itself 7 times. X times x times x times x times x times x. Is that 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times x. 7. So when I take these two quantities and multiply them together, how many times is x being multiplied times itself now? Well, 7 plus 3 makes x to the 10th power, and that's why the product rule works the way that it does. All right? Now, let's go to the next one. So a to the 5th times a. Now remember, if there's no exponent written, it's understood to be a 1. Anytime you don't see it written, it's understood to be a 1. So this is a to the 5th times a to the 1st power, which in which case I'll still add the exponent. So 5 plus 1 makes 6. So the answer here is a to the 6th power. All right? Let's try the next one. W to the 7th times w to the 4th. Product rule says I need to add the exponents. This becomes w to 7 plus 4 is 11. The 11th power is the answer there. All right? Okay, so now we kind of get to some examples that have coefficients, meaning numbers in front of the variable, in front of the x, or whatever letter you have here. Okay, so like for example, in this case, what we'll do is we'll multiply the exponents, or excuse me, multiply the coefficients first, then we'll simplify the variables with the product rule. So like for example, in this one, number 4, we have 4x to the 3rd times 3x to the 5th. I'll need to multiply the coefficients first. So I need to do the regular numbers first. So what's 4 times 3? That will give me 12. We'll write that in first. Now I can do the letters. X to the 3rd times x to the 5th. Well, remember, what do I need to do with these two exponents, the 3 and the 5? I need to add them together, which means it's going to be 12x to the 8th power. And then there's your answer. All right. So again, if you've got coefficients in front of the letters, you need to multiply those together first and then deal with the letters next. So on this example, I've got 2 times 5, which will give me 10. X to the 3rd times x to the 8th. Need to add 8 plus 3 together and get x to the 11th. All right. Then from here, the next one that we come to is 5x squared times 6x to the 4th. And so when we come to that one now, what we'll need to do is we will need to multiply the 5 times 6 together first, which will give me 30. Then I've got x squared times x to the 4th. And so 2 plus 4, add the exponents together to get 6. So that would be 30x to the 6th power. So again, when you've got coefficients, then what you'll need to do is you'll need to multiply those coefficients together first. And then once that happens, then you can go ahead and multiply the variables together to come up with the correct answer. All right? Okay, we have 3 more examples that we need to look at. Let's take a look at number 7. And now, once we get to this one, okay, the other thing that we now have to take into consideration is the sign of the coefficients. And we didn't have to look at that earlier. So now in this case, I've got 2 quantities. All right? So I've got 3r squared s to the 7th times, remember when you see 2 quantities together with a set of parentheses and nothing in between, that means multiply, times negative 4r to the 5th s. All right? So again, I still have to take the coefficients and deal with them first. Right? So I want to take the 3 and multiply it times the negative 4 and deal with that first. Well, first of all, a positive times a negative is a negative. So my whole expression, my whole product is going to be negative. And then 3 times 4 makes 12. So I'm going to start off by writing a negative 12 by multiplying these coefficients together. So the new step here is you've got to take the signs into consideration. Remember, positive times a positive is a positive. Positive times a negative is a negative. Negative times a positive is a negative. And negative times a negative is a positive. So when we're going to simplify, we've got to make sure that we take that into consideration first. Now, the next thing that we come to is we've got 2 different variables to take care of here. Let's deal with the r's first. So I've got r squared times r to the 5th. Now remember what the product rule says to do with the exponents. When you're multiplying, you've got to add the exponents together. So I've got r squared times r to the 5th. That's going to be r. And remember how I decide what exponent I want here is I have to add these 2 together. So 2 plus 5 is going to make 7. So that's r to the 7th. And now my s's, I've got s to the 7th times s. Remember, there's nothing there. That's understood to be a 1. So that's going to make s to the 7 plus 1, which makes 8. And then that is the correct answer. All right. So when I multiply these 2 together, I get negative 12 r to the 7th s to the 8th as my answer. All right. So moving on now to the next example. Okay, once again, I need to take the coefficients into consideration and multiply them together first. Notice the sign of each one. I've got negative times a negative, which is going to be a positive. And then I've got 7 times 4, which is going to be 28. So I've got 28, then p to the 4th, p squared. All right, p to the 4th times p squared. That's going to be p to the 4 plus 2, which makes 6. Right? Now, one common mistake that people make when they're doing this, they want to multiply these numbers together, Coach, because it's multiplication. I need to multiply them together. But that's not true. It's not 4 times 2 to get 8. It's 4 plus 2 to get 6. When you're multiplying, you add the exponents. That's the rule. All right? Now, the next letter that I come to is Q. So this one's got 3 letters to deal with this time. That's fine. Just take them one at a time. Q to the 3rd times q to the 5th. 3 plus 5 makes q to the 8th. Then I've got r times r to the 4th. Remember, this r means first power. 1 plus 4 makes 5. R to the 5th. And then that is the correct answer. So it doesn't matter how many letters that you have. Just take the like letters and multiply them together and simplify by adding the exponents together. All right? There is one more that we need to take a look at here, and that is number 9. So once again, we're multiplying 2 expressions. I'll take the exponent or the coefficients into consideration first. Positive times a negative is a negative, so we know our answer is negative. 8 times 3 is 24, so we'll go ahead and write that in. Now we'll take the letters one at a time. Only have 2 letters to deal with here instead of 3, like in the last one. So x to the 4th times x to the 4th. So I need to add 4 plus 4 and get x to the 8th power is what I need here. And so in order to finish that off, I'll go y squared times y to the 9th. So I know that's going to be y. And remember, I need to add these 2 together. 2 plus 9 makes y to the 11th. So remember, the rule is when you're multiplying, you need to add the exponents, not multiply them. So this is not 2 times 9 is 18. It's the 11th power, not the 18th power. And like I said from the beginning, the reason why that's the case is, remember, if you raise something to the 3rd power, that means times itself 3 times. If you add it to the 7th power, times itself 7 times. Now how many times is it being multiplied together? Well, you must add these two. All right, so based on these examples that we've gone through, you can now take this information and pull up quiz 6-1 in Canvas and take about 15 minutes to complete that quiz. And then when you're done, you can move on to the next lesson, 6-2.